So, welcome back, everyone, to the Financial Freedom Through Apartment Investing Meetup, proud affiliate of the GOB Network of Apartment Investors, where we educate, where we empower, and we connect people to wealth. I am your host, Mark Caesar, and today we have Mr. Jeffrey Holst with us, who will be sharing his tidbits on mindset, which is, I think, a very powerful topic. I had the opportunity to connect with Jeff randomly through Angels Meetup, and I've watched an excerpt on a video that he did, and it was very powerful. I love the concept, but I'll let him brag on his story. It is his story after all. Jeff, welcome to the show, sir. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me, Mark.
Yeah, so the platform is yours. You can do as you please.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll try not to be too crazy, and I won't take too much of your time. So yeah, like Mark was saying, I'm Jeff Holst. I'm a multifamily investor, so I feel really comfortable in a multifamily meetup. I've been on a number of podcasts. I've told my story, so if you've heard it somewhere else, I apologize for repeating some of this. But it's what I do. I get out here and I talk about myself because I guess I'm like that. So I hope that's all right with you all. Anyway, thanks so much for having me and listening to me here. So I want to tell you a little bit about where I am and where I'm coming from, because I think it's super useful to people. And I don't have anything to sell. I don't have any kind of pitch for you. I just really do these meetups and podcasts because I really, truly believe that what I have to say is important, and I hope that you get real value from it. If someone wants to interrupt at any point, feel free to jump in. I have literally no agenda here at all, other than to tell you a little bit about myself. So I'll start by telling you where I am now, because I think it's relevant and it adds texture to where we're at, and then I'll tell you how I got here. So I'm a recovering attorney. That's how I like to describe myself. I practiced law for about 5 years from around 2007 to around 2011 or 12, somewhere around there. Haven't practiced law for about a decade. The main reason for that is because I didn't like practicing law. So I did like a lot of people did. I went to school and got a job because I thought I could make money. And it turns out that's not the right strategy, right? Like you have to do things that you love, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So I'm married. I have have a dog and a house. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We have about 300 units of residential at this point. Those are primarily JV deals. I have a couple of syndications I've been involved in on the GP side, but even when we do those, it's we keep half the deal for ourselves. So I mean, I have a significant percentage ownership in almost every deal that I've done. I think the lowest I have is about 20%. The most is 50. I don't do anything on my own. I've never done a deal by myself. I don't intend to ever do a deal by myself. That's unusual in this world. I occasionally toy with the idea of doing it. In fact, I was recently on the Bigger Pockets podcast, and they asked me why I didn't do deals by myself. And my answer was, because I keep finding people that I think should be investing in real estate. So I have a duplex I'm closing on next week. I was going to buy it by myself just because I thought it was about time, after a decade of real estate investing, to do something on my own. And one of my friends was like, "Oh, I wish I could find a good deal." And I was like, "Hey, let's just split it." So that's what I do. And I think it's really important to help people get into real estate investing, because the freedom that it brings you is unbelievable, actually. I mean, it's something that most people never get an opportunity to experience, and it's really kind of sad because MJ DeMarco, the guy who wrote A Millionaire Fastlane, says that the worst possible deal is trading 2 days of your life for 5 days, or trading 5 days of your life for 2 days off. He also talks about trading 50 weeks of your life for 2 weeks off. That's the primary reason why I keep trying to get people to invest in real estate. I don't know anything else that you can do with your time and energy that can put you in a situation where you really don't have to, be making that 5 for 2 trade. Which, if I give you $5 for $2, you'd say no. But for some reason, we think it's great to work 5 days and have 2 days off, and it kind of bugs me. And so that's why I come on these shows and come onto these meetups and do these things. So, all right, so that's enough preface about where I am. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story because I think it's relevant. So the first thing I'm going to tell you about my story is that in 2008, when I was practicing law, actually, I'm going to start back a little bit further than that even. Let me start with how I ended up practicing law, because I think this is relevant. It doesn't really matter what you want to do with life. Sometimes we make our decisions based on what seems right in the moment without really thinking about it. So I went to school, I went to community college. My parents went through a divorce when I was in high school. And when I was at community college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had really no idea what I wanted to do. And I was sitting there in my 3rd year of a community college, because I'm an overachiever and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just kept going to school. I was sitting there in a class, it was a history class, and I don't think I'll ever forget it. There was a professor, it was a Renaissance history, right? So I think it was like, 1500s or 1400s, whatever the Renaissance was, somewhere around there. I really should be better with history than I am, but we were talking about Michelangelo, and specifically about a sculpture that Michelangelo carved in, that was for the centerpiece of a tomb for a pope. I think it was Pope Julius II, if I remember correctly. But there's this sculpture, and I think I can, if you guys want to Google this, you can, if you feel like it, but the sculpture is called Michelangelo's Moses, all right? So it's basically Michelangelo's, Moses is sitting on a chair, and he's got this long flowing robe, and he's got a long flowing beard, and he's kind of got his hands, sort of pulling his beard off to the side. And he actually has horns on his head, and they're called the horns of truth. And that's actually a misinterpretation of an ancient biblical text where they talks about after he came down from speaking with God, and he had the 10 commandments in his hands, that he had horns of truth. But what most people think is the interpretation was actually he was glowing, and that it was just a misinterpretation. But the point is, Michelangelo carves this sculpture for the Pope. And you got to remember that, like, in the Renaissance, the Pope was like, a religious leader, yes, but also like the president of the world, right? Like it was the most important person in the world. And there probably isn't anyone in the world today that has that level of importance. It's some level above world leader. That doesn't exist anymore. Essentially like a world dictator, because, at that time, at least for the known world, at least for the Western world, he was, basically whatever he said went, right? That's what the Pope was like. And so Michelangelo carves this sculpture, and I would contend it's probably the greatest single sculpture ever carved in history. And I'm not the only person that says that. People like Sigmund Freud wrote articles about it. Even Mark Twain wrote about it in one of his travel logs. This is like the ultimate of all of marble sculptures. And so he's talking about the sculpture in the Renaissance class, and they talked about how when they were at the unveiling, the Pope was there and Michelangelo was there, and they kind of pulled the sheet off of the sculpture, and Michelangelo just stopped and he didn't say anything. And it got awkward. There was this silence, and no one really knew how to take it. And finally, after a few moments, one of Michelangelo's students came up to him and he said, "Master, you must say something. You have to say something." And he took the chisel that he had in his hand and he threw it like full force at the sculpture, and he said a single word: "Move." Because he was so passionate about this sculpture that he actually thought it would get up and move. And I mean, this sculpture is amazing, right? But it was also made out of marble. It wasn't going anywhere. And he stood in front of the Pope, the most important person in the world, and he literally went crazy. That's how passionate he was about it. And when I was hearing this, you know, at 21 years old, I thought to myself, there's nothing in my life that I'm that passionate about that I would stand in front of the president of the world and, you know, scream insane things like, you know, this should come to life in front of me. And when I heard that story, I thought, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I'm passionate about, but I do know I need to go see this sculpture. So I literally left the class and I called 1-800-Priceline, because this was in the 90s and we didn't have the internet. You know, I mean, it existed, but we didn't have Priceline.com and stuff like that. So I called 1-800-Priceline and I immediately booked a ticket to London. Now, you could say that was a mistake, because it turns out that the sculpture's in Rome. It's in a little church on a hill above the Colosseum. But I knew that, and I thought to myself, I didn't want to just fly to Rome and go see the sculpture. I wanted to make it like a quest. In my mind, it was like I was Indiana Jones, right? I was gonna fly to London and wander my way down to Rome, and that's what I did. I mean, I had a 30-day return ticket, and the only reason it was 30 days was because that was the longest that Priceline would let you book a plane ticket for. So I booked a 30-day ticket, and I didn't have a passport when I booked the ticket, so I had to like immediately apply for an expedited passport. And this, by the way, this happened in it was like towards the end of the second semester of my third year at community college. And I had just gotten an income tax refund from like a Hope credit or something like that. So I had about $3,000 to my name. And I literally took all of that money in cash that I had left after buying the plane ticket. And I bought a backpack and I shoved some clothes in it and I flew to London. I'd never even been out of the United States before in my life. Well, I might have been to Canada as a child, but I had never been to, you know, anywhere ever. And I just was like, hey, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna go see this sculpture. And I did that. I wandered around Europe. I had this amazing experience. I saw, you know, churches and cathedrals, and I went to Gibraltar and saw the Rock of Gibraltar. In fact, we went up to the top of the Rock of Gibraltar and saw the last of the European apes, the little Bavarian apes. They're about like, I don't know, they're like this big, like the size of your head, and they'll like try to grab your stuff and whatever. And you know, so we did all this amazing stuff. And when I say we, it was just people I randomly met along the way. I had gone completely by myself. And I finally got to London, or from London down to Rome, and I went to the cathedral and I climbed up this little hill and I found the little church called San Pedro in Vincole. It's loosely translated St. Peter in Chains. Because they have on display there the chains that Peter was in when the angels apparently released him. And so I saw this display and I looked around and I didn't see the sculpture. And, you know, I didn't have like a smartphone. So I'm like looking through my guidebook going, where's the sculpture? And it says it's there. And I'm looking, it's a small church and I didn't see it anywhere. And then I noticed in the corner, there's like this shadowy like thing sitting in the corner. So I walked over to it and you can barely make the sculpture out. Sits in the corner of the church, and I'm like, this is really weird. And then I find this place where you can drop a coin in and it's going to light the sculpture up. So I drop this coin in and I hear this like chunk chunk, you know, sound. And then I hear like almost like old school lights powering up. It's like that. And it lights up, and it's like this moment out of the movies, right? Where I'm going to like figure everything out. Like I'm gonna know what it is that I want to do with my life. And it lights up and the sculpture's there in front of me. And I'm like, it's okay. Right? Like it wasn't the most amazing thing I ever saw in my life. I mean, it's a really cool sculpture, and I've gone back since and I've been less disappointed, but it didn't solve my problem, right? My problem was I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I walked outside of the church and I sat down on the front steps of the church and I lit up a cigarette because I was young and dumb and did that sort of thing back then. And I was smoking a cigarette, looking down at the Colosseum and thinking, what should I do with my life? What should I do with my life? And the only thing I knew is that I really enjoyed seeing old stuff like the Colosseum. So I made a short list of things that I wanted to see, things that were old, like the Colosseum. And the things that came to my mind that day were the pyramids, Petra in Jordan, and Machu Picchu in Peru. So I had this short list, these 3 things that I wanted to see. And I thought, I'm going to just go like to law school, make some money. And when I have some money, I'm going to go travel the world and I'm going to see this stuff. And that's what I'm going to do with my life. And so I made this decision. I'm going to go to law school because I want to see the pyramids, because I want to see Machu Picchu. And the thing is, I did those things. I went to law school. I got good grades. I was my graduating class speaker. I got married. I did all this stuff, right? And then I went to see the pyramids, and I went multiple times to Egypt, in fact, and I went to Petra in Jordan, and then I went to Machu Picchu in 2008, and I climbed up to the top of Machu Picchu, and I'm looking down at this. It's the Machu Picchu is an Incan city on top of the mountains. If you've ever seen, like, if you're not familiar with this, is another thing that's great to Google. And I probably should have brought slides so you guys could see this stuff, so I apologize. But Machu Picchu is like in the cloud forest. It's an amazing and beautiful place. It's almost overwhelming how beautiful it is. And I sat there at the top of Machu Picchu feeling like crap, actually. I didn't feel well at all. I was out of shape and tired, and I'd climbed up a mountain and I'm at elevation, and I'm looking down at this beautiful, beautiful sight. And I thought to myself, now what? It's the last thing on my list, right? I made a list 10 years earlier in 2008 or in 1999. I'd made this list, and now it's 2008, almost a decade later. I'd seen the last thing on the list, and I'm looking down at it, and I'm like, something's missing. Something's still missing. I don't know what it is. It's missing. And I mean, I hadn't had a bad day in about a couple of decades then. I mean, honestly, like 13 years. This is another thing, like Mark kind of preface this by saying, I'm going to talk about how I gave up bad days, and I want to do that in just a second, and then we're going to wrap up, because I don't want to. I could talk about this stuff forever, but I looked down at the city, and I thought, I just don't know what I want to do with my life. Like, I still didn't know. It was like repeating a decade earlier, sitting down looking at the Colosseum. It was still an unsatisfied sort of way of living. I was happy. I was happy in my marriage. I had my dogs in my house, and I was successful, but I still felt like there was something missing, and I didn't really know what it was. And I determined right then and there that I needed to sort it out. And I went home, and I developed a cough, and I felt really bad. And a week or so later, I went to the ER and got some blood work done. And I went home. They gave me some antibiotics. And then about 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday, this doctor called me. And the doctor says, there's no easy way to tell you this, but you have leukemia, and you have to come to the hospital right now. Right now, 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. And I said, okay. And the doctor said, you need to repeat this back to me. And I said, okay, I have to come to the hospital right now. And I didn't want to say the words, I have leukemia, because my wife was in the room and I didn't want her to know. I wanted to take a moment to process what was going on. And, my wife was like, why is the doctor calling you at 10 o'clock at night? So it turns out you can't actually keep that secret. And it's not the easiest thing to do. But basically, she said to me, well, what do they want? And I said, for the first time, those words, I have leukemia, and I have leukemia. I have to go to the hospital. And she freaked out, which didn't really help. I mean, I understand it in retrospect, but I'm trying to stay like super calm and focused. And she's crying and all this stuff. And I said, well, we were watching Heroes. I don't know if you guys remember the show Heroes, but it was a thing back then. We were watching Heroes. There was like 5 minutes left, and she was like, we need to go to the hospital. And I'm like, we need to finish Heroes. Like, there's 5 minutes left in the show, And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to start getting ready. And it was obvious that she couldn't drive because she was very, very upset. And I said to her, okay, I'm going to call your dad, and I'm going to get him to come drive us. So I called him, and he came, and, we prayed, and we got in the car, and we drove to the hospital. And then I did something really dumb, and that's call everyone I know and tell them I had leukemia. So I started calling, I called my mom. I said, hey, Mom, I have leukemia. I don't know anything. I'm on the way to the hospital, and I hung up. And then I called my sister, and then I called my brother, and then I called my dad, and then I called, friends. And by the time I got to the hospital, I think I made like 10 calls in like 15 minutes. And I told them all that. And then, of course, when you call someone and tell them that, they show up at the hospital. So people started showing up at the hospital, and I was, still didn't know anything. Other than that, my white blood cell count was like 258,000 instead of 4,000, 5,000 like it's supposed to be. And my uncle was there, and he said to me, "This sounds really bad. My cousin had died of leukemia a few years earlier, and her white blood cell count had only got to 150,000, and mine was 250." And so we didn't know anything. We didn't know what kind of leukemia I had, but for about 3 days, everyone, nurses, doctors, myself, my family, we all believed that I had days, maybe weeks, if I was lucky, months to live. This was in September. I remember my dad saying to me the second day, he said, if you live till February, this is in September, if you live till February, I'll take you to Australia. And I said, I just hope I make it till Christmas. That's literally where we were. And my brother, he, I love him, but he came into the hospital that night, and he said to me, "I bet that today's a bad day." And this is where I want to wrap up. My brother said to me, "Today's a bad day. It must be a bad day." And the reason he said that is because when I was 17, I told him I was never going to have a bad day again. And I never did. I went days and days and days of telling people I wasn't going to have a bad day, even before I believed it myself. And I remember this. I actually decided this one day. I apologize that I'm jumping all over here, but this stuff is so important. I want you all to hear this, right? So I literally, when I was 17, I walked into a bathroom with a knife, and I held it against my wrist. And I said, because I'd broken up with my girlfriend, and my parents were going through a divorce. And I thought, this is dumb. My life is terrible. I'm gonna be done with this, I guess. I don't know. It seems weird to me now because I'm 43, and I've it's been a couple decades and more, 26 years now. So I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know if I was clinically depressed. I have no idea about any of that, but I know that I was unhappy. And I put this knife on my wrist, and it was a Miracle Blade 2000, had like a serrated blade. And I really think like a serrated blade might have saved my life because it hurt. I didn't feel good. Like I didn't like the pain of having a knife on my wrist. And I said to myself, this is dumb. And I threw the knife in the sink, and I looked in the mirror, and I said, you live in a middle-class family, and you're young and healthy. Like, what the F? Like, why are you doing this? And I walked out there, and I said, today's a good day. And I said, today's a good day out loud multiple times, and it didn't work. And I just kept doing it over and over again, right? I didn't know, I had never heard of affirmations or mantras. This is the 90s, or early mid 90s at the time, like 95, 96, somewhere around there. And, Tony Robbins might have been a thing, but I hadn't heard of him. YouTube hadn't been invented. Google wasn't around. So I just did it. I just said, today's a good day over and over again. And every time I saw a mirror, actually, that was a trigger for me. Like, so when I got in my car and saw the mirror, I'd go, today's a good day. And if I was by myself, I'd say it out loud. If there were people around, I would just, think it to myself. And I would do it like 10, 20, 30 times a day. And one day I walked into a 7-Eleven about 6 months later, and the guy behind the counter, he said to me, how you doing today? And I said, I never have bad days. And I literally went, holy shit, I never have bad days. Because I realized I hadn't had a bad day in months. And that's where I want to leave you guys, because 13 years later, when I got diagnosed with leukemia, my brother came into the hospital, and he said to me, I bet today's a bad day. What I said is, I didn't get diagnosed till 10 o'clock at night. 22 hours were pretty good. And the next day, when I was in the hospital and I was dealing with the fact that I thought I was going to die at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was struggling a little bit, and there was a shift change, and the new nurse came in, and she looked at me and she said, oh, Jeff, I'm so sorry to see you here. And I went, Shelly, I'm so happy to be here, because she was my babysitter when I was a kid, and I hadn't seen her in a decade. And I thought to myself, this is all worth it because I got to see Shelly. And that might sound delusional, and maybe it is, but the thing is, how you perceive your day is how you receive it. And in retrospect, that was probably the greatest day of my life, because if I hadn't gotten sick, I wouldn't have been forced into bankruptcy, which is what happened next, which is ironic for a bankruptcy attorney. But if I hadn't been sick and forced into bankruptcy, I would have never gotten started investing in real estate. And I started investing in real estate because I wanted to protect my wife. I thought, if I die, she needs money. And so we figured it out, and we did it one day at a time. And all of that together put me in a position where 7 years later, at 37 years old, I was able to quit my job, and I went into work in 5 years. And I love every day. I mean, I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, for crying out loud, last year. I spent a month in Africa. If it wasn't for COVID, I would have spent a lot longer than a month in Africa. And this year, I spent a month in Puerto Rico. And last month, well, actually November 1st, so this month, I actually rented a place in Puerto Rico on a 12-month lease, and I'm going to be moving to Puerto Rico. And my view is amazing, and you all are welcome to come visit and see the ocean. And the thing is, if you want to learn anything from my story, there's really two takeaways. One is you choose how you react to the situation around you. Whatever is going on in your life, it might not have been my fault that I got leukemia, but it was my responsibility to react to it. And I reacted to it in the best way I knew how, and that was to accept what I couldn't control and to focus on what I could. And so I went and got treatment, and I'm lucky. I mean, that's the long and short of it is I could have died. I've had another cancer since then. I had melanoma earlier this year. Another time, got lucky, caught it super early, and I'm still around, and I'm going to live my life assuming that I'm going to be around for a long time. But if I'm not, it's okay, because I've had an extraordinary life, and I have an opportunity now, unlike anything I ever thought I would have. And that is, I get to come and talk to people and tell them how they too can give up bad days, because that's the thing. Like, the money's one thing, that's cool. It's fun to have a lot of resources, but what's really fun is enjoying your life. And you can enjoy your life when you're poor. I know, because when I was bankrupt, I enjoyed my life. And when I was in a career I didn't love, I enjoyed my life. And I know that right now, I'm going to have a good day today. I'm going to have a good day tomorrow. I'm going to remind myself constantly still, right? I have a coffee cup in front of me right now, no bad days. And yeah, that's about it. I don't know if it's helpful to you guys or not, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And if not, I look forward to getting to know you all in whatever form we can, anytime.
Man, that was a powerful story, Jeff. I know when we spoke, I didn't get the full intent of your story, but to be transparent and share all of that is very powerful. And of course, my takeaway from this is, you have the power. The words have power. So what you speak and what you say, affirmations are very powerful. And I know this is a multi-family type meetup, but sometimes you have to step away from the logistics and the numbers and really do a self-check and an analysis to really see, okay, where am I mentally? What's going on? How can I have a good day? I'm sure we all go through hell. We all go through bad days if a deal doesn't close or something happens, but just speaking something, a small affirmation that as I'm going to have a good day can turn that around. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. With that said, I will open up the floor for a few questions.
Hey, can I add something really quick, Mark?
Yeah, go ahead.
So something I probably should have mentioned is too, this is not a magic trick, right? Like, it is a choice. I really believe you can choose it, but like, good stuff's going to happen to you every day and bad stuff's going to happen to you every day. Good and bad stuff happens to everybody every single day. And Tony Robbins talks about the reticular activating system, which is basically the idea that you can, your subconscious mind defaults to things that are familiar. I think that's what happens with this, right? The more time you spend focusing on positive, the easier it becomes to see positive. So when I got diagnosed with melanoma, my first thought was, wow, that sucks, right? I mean, because it wasn't fun. But the next thought, literally like 1 second later, was, this is going to make a great story on a podcast someday. Like, I mean, literally, like, there's always some positive and always some negative in everything that happens to you. And if you can focus on the positive, and minimize the negative. Let's not ignore it, because, if you find out you have cancer, you should probably get cancer surgery, or, take whatever treatment is recommended. Or if you find out, anything bad, you need to deal with it, but you don't need to dwell on it. So I think that's a really important element of it.
Definitely, I totally agree. So with that said, how have you taken that mindset that you've embodied at such a young age into the business realm? And how has that helped you navigate the world of business as an entrepreneur and investor?
Yeah, so the biggest mistake I made in real estate investing was not getting started soon enough. So getting sick actually was super helpful for this, because it motivated me to get started. I was a guy who, when I was 15 years old, I would sneak out of my bedroom and watch late night infomercials about real estate investing, like Carlton Sheets, No Money Down, stuff like that. And so it wasn't that I wasn't interested in real estate. I just kept thinking, well, someday I'll invest in real estate. Someday I'll invest in real estate. And the problem with someday is, there's only today. This is Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now stuff, but it's true. You can only live right now. You can't live in the future. You can't live in the past. So what you do now matters, and it impacts your future. The past is irrelevant, except for from what you can learn from it. So one of the things that I've done in my business career is I've refused to wait to take chances. One of the things that I think is super important is, and I think that was Richard Branson that said it, but basically the basic idea is the difference, that the thing that separates successful people from people who never succeed is really that successful people take action without all the possible information. So I have tried to combine the recognizing that someday may never come with taking action when I have an appropriate level of information. I wear this wristband. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it says ready, fire, aim. Right? So ready, fire, aim is a little different than ready, aim, fire, right? You have to be ready. You have to have a certain level of knowledge before you can take action, but then you have to take the shot, and you can always adjust it later. I think of it like a rocket ship. If you want to send a rocket ship to the International Space Station, the hardest part is getting it to orbit. It's not getting it to the space station, right? You can be off by 12,000 miles and use 90% of your fuel getting off of the Earth into orbit, and you're still fine, because once you're in orbit, it's a lot easier to make those adjustments. So I think that's the thing. You still have to be ready. You have to build that rocket first. But once you build the rocket, you just got to take the shot, and then you can make the adjustments you need to get to where you want to be. And so for me, that's how I apply mindset to my business. I started out buying single family homes. I probably should have been doing multifamily a lot sooner. But once I recognized the value of doing multifamily, I went all into multifamily. And maybe 2 years from now, I'll have a completely different strategy, and that's okay too, because I'm in a position where I can make those adjustments to get to where I need to be.
That is powerful. I like that, the analogy, ready, fire, aim. Just get ready, educate yourself, take that shot and adjust accordingly as you proceed from there. That is powerful stuff. So I will definitely open up the floor if anyone have any questions for Jeffrey, feel free to ask away.
Yeah, I do.
Go right ahead.
All right. I just want to say, first off, thanks, Jeffrey, for sharing your story. I think this is the second or third time I've heard it, because I've heard it before on a few podcasts, but this is the first time I've had a one-on-one. So this is awesome. So thanks, Mark, for getting this together. So my first question is, I'm sure you've heard of like a miracle morning and everything like that. Is there a designated time of day that you focus yourself, or I guess like meditate, or is it just like a continuous thing throughout the day, like every event that you're doing, you're telling yourself, hey, today's a good day, let's do this, or kind of like that?
Yeah, so the mantra stuff, right? The today's a good day stuff, that is something it's almost continuous for me now, right? Because I walk into a gas station and someone says, "How are you doing today?" And my visceral reaction is, I never have bad days, because that's how I define myself. And I think that a big part of your mindset is how you define yourself. And this applies to almost everything in your life. Like you should identify yourself, and you don't have to tell anyone what your own secret identity is, right? But like you should identify yourself in a way that creates the type of person you want to be. So a part of my identity is that I'm a guy who doesn't have bad days, right? Another part of my identity is that I'm really, really freaking interesting. Like I choose to lean into my interestingness. And I know that's, I mean, I don't like to tell people that always because it sounds kind of weird, but the reality is if I lean into that when I'm making a decision, like what would the more interesting version of me do right now? Or I like to say, and I almost hate to admit this out loud, but I'm going to say it anyway. What would the most interesting man in the world do right now? Like I actually make my decisions based on that. Like if I'm not sure what to do, I go, what's the more interesting choice? Because that's how I define myself now. And that's how I decided to move to Puerto Rico. I decided on a whim to move to Puerto Rico. I'm like, I'm going to move to Puerto Rico. I'll figure it out later. And now I have a place, so I guess I'm going to have to do it. I've been telling people I'm moving to Puerto Rico. And that's how I started my podcast, the Old Fashioned Real Estate Show, where I've been hiding my little, I've got my bourbon here. It's nighttime, so we get the Old Fashioned Real Estate glass with the bourbon in it. Because, you know, that's what we do. We drink bourbon and talk about real estate on YouTube. And we just did that on a whim. We're like, one day we're like, hey, we're going to start a YouTube show, right? Because it'll be fun and it'll be interesting. So I do that. But the second part of your question, which is like, is there a specific time during the day where you meditate? I have 2 times during the day where I meditate, and I don't call it meditation, but it is meditation. I didn't realize it at the time. Just like I didn't know what mantras were, I didn't know what meditation was. I just did this stuff. One thing I do is every night before I go to bed, I completely clear my mind. I started this because I used to be insomniac and I couldn't sleep ever. And so I had this idea. I would stare at my alarm clock and watch time pass without thinking of anything. And anytime I thought of something, I'd start over and I'd try to make it 15 minutes without having a thought. And once I was able to do that, I was able to go to sleep almost instantly. And I can still today. Like if I wanted to, I could lay down right now on the floor and fall asleep in like a minute. It just doesn't matter. Like I'm like really good at going to sleep now. Like I sleep really deep and I wake up really refreshed. And part of that's creating a nighttime routine. And that really is a form of meditation. So every night when I go to bed, no matter what time I'm going to bed, if I go to bed late at night or early, if I have to get up early, it doesn't matter. I take at least a few minutes and I just try to clear my mind completely. So I do that every night. And then every morning, yeah, it could be the bourbon. That could be. That's true, Linda. I think you're probably right. There's some of that too. But the other thing I do is every morning I get up and I have a cup of coffee by myself. And if I can, I try to look at something peaceful like birds on the bird feeder outside my dining room table. Or now, if I had the ability to share my screen, I think Mark could probably turn it on. I could show you the view from my balcony in Puerto Rico, and then you would see how ridiculous this place is. And let me see if I find it real quick here. All right, good. So now my new plan is
you should have sharing capabilities now.
Yeah, all right, cool. So this is literally, I didn't even go there. Like I just rented it sight unseen. I don't know if you guys are seeing my screen now or not, but that literally is the view from the balcony. I've been there since, and it's just stupid, right? I mean, the place isn't that nice, but the view is so good that now I'm going to get up every morning and I'm just going to have my coffee and stare at the ocean. But that's the other time that I meditate. So in the morning, early, before my wife's up, even before my dog's up, if I can help it, so I can just go straight to coffee and take about 10, 15 minutes just to stare at the ocean or at the birds or whatever, you know, the falling leaves, it doesn't matter. So that's how I handle that.
Awesome. Now that is actually a very beautiful scenery there.
Yeah, well, you guys come see it. I'm telling you, I wasn't joking. Like, you know, of course, I should be careful about this because you're going to post this on YouTube, and then there'll be like 1,000 people at my front door. But it's like it's just so stupid. That's it's on a 2-mile white sand beach, 150 feet from my back door.
Nice. That is awesome. So I do have another question for you, Jeff. What is the best time-saving hack that you found to navigate your schedule?
Well, I mean, I don't have anything like that pressing on my time, honestly. So the best time-saving hack is not having a job. It saves tons of time. So if you can get yourself financially free so that you're not having to worry about that, then that's really big. Now, the only reason I'm able to do that, even though I have real estate investing and I have different businesses that I run and stuff, is that I've been really good at making sure that I build out a team, right? People that can do a lot of this stuff for me. So, you know, getting good property managers, getting a good assistant, these things can really, really be huge for you. But another part of it is just prioritizing what you want to do. I mean, there's probably like, you know, there's that 80-20 rule. I'm not a huge proponent of believing it's exactly right, but I will say this, probably about 80% of what you do is completely irrelevant and you could probably just not do it and you'd survive. You know, there's certain things you have to do, but a lot of it, it's like you do it because it seems like the thing to do. And so I try not to waste my time doing things that are just busy work just to do them. I'd rather, you know, I'd rather just like, you know, stare at the ocean or like go have a cup of coffee.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's funny, Jeff, because that was kind of like my next question was, how do you decide what's important? Like, what are the kind of things that you do to decide that? Do you like write down your goal for the day or you know?
Yeah, so I have two things I do. One thing I do is I call it a personal declaration. I actually got this from one of my coaches. Actually, I think Mark, you said that you met me at one of Angel's meetups. I'm not sure if you met Jamil or not, but my coach Jamil Sayed, Dr. Jamil, he had me last year. He actually had me, and he's a productivity and life coach. He had me last year write a post-dated letter to myself, basically like. And you guys all should do this. It's freaking amazing. Like you write a letter, like 2 or 3 pages of gratitude of all the things you've accomplished. So it'd be like, I can't believe it's January 1st, 2023 right now, right? And you write it now, and then you read it out loud to yourself every morning and every night before you go to bed. You know, and it's amazing. So like you basically want to like divide your goals into like 4 categories. And, you know, and it'll say things like my personal letter, it says things like, I'm so grateful that I was able to, you know, start taking supplements every day and that I haven't missed a single day all year, right? I'm like, that was on my list. And I'm really grateful that I was able to find a place to live in the Caribbean. That's literally on my letter for this year. And now I have a place in Puerto Rico, right? I mean, that's just ridiculous. Like, I didn't know I wanted to move to Puerto Rico. I didn't even know. I said, actually, my letter, it says, I changed it partway through the year to doing it this year, but I was like, that I made big progress on my plan to move to the Caribbean in the next 3 years. That was what my letter said. And instead of like taking 3 years, it took, you know, like 10 months. I mean, stupid. So that to me, like, is the focus point for me, is like this like year-long goal block of stuff that I wanted to accomplish. And I actually made a YouTube video. It's a private video. Let me see if I can find it for you guys. I'll give you the link about how that letter is structured. I made it for some people just the other day. So I'll look this up real quick, but where I explain how, you know, how you can actually, sorry about that, guys. It's private, so I have to figure out exactly where my private videos are on YouTube. I mean, that's the problem with this stuff, right? Is like the technology is awesome, but it's also, all right, here we go. So let's see here. Where is the chat? All right, so if you guys grab this video, because it's private, but if you have this link, you can watch it. It kind of breaks down how I look at that letter and how the letter works. And the different categories on the letter and stuff like that. And it's about 10 minutes long. And I'm telling you that if you do nothing else from this conversation, that will change your life. Like if you just do that, it is amazing what you can accomplish in a year if you stay focused on the same stuff every day.
Good stuff. Does anyone else have any other questions for Jeffrey at the moment?
No,
Erickson, take
keep asking, man. And no one else wants to talk, then you get to ask it anything you want.
Yeah, so shifting a little bit to the real estate space, I remember you said, or at least in the podcast, a lot of the deals you did were other people's money, or you did debt instead of equity. Could you kind of like talk through
Yeah, sure.
kind of like how you're interacting and making these organic relationships to where, they're willing to do the debt instead of equity and like things like that?
Yeah.
Maybe just wave top.
Yeah. So the thing about raising money is, I mean, obviously there's legal components and stuff, and you got to make sure you're following the law and all that. But the real trick to raising money, in my estimation, is you have to think about what the other person is wanting. And if you understand what the other person wants, it's actually really easy to raise money. If I said to you, hey, I want you to loan me money and I'm going to pay you 6% interest, you're probably going to be like, that doesn't sound very good, right? But the thing is, there are people that have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in bank accounts making essentially zero money. If you find those people, it's really easy to give them 6% and have them make money, right? Now, some of them they're worried about inflation. So like right now, what we're doing is we're doing a combined debt equity thing. We have several investors that are worried about inflation, but they also want to produce income. And so we do these deals in I don't know if you were referring to the Bigger Pockets podcast or not, that came out a few weeks ago, but I talked about this with Brandon and David. Is like, we do this thing where we basically have one or two investors put up all the money for a deal, and we go and form a company together where we're all active, and they'll loan the money to the company, and then the company will go and take the debt, and we might all personally guarantee it or whatever, but the company will go buy the asset, and we might own. I mean, I did a 16-unit deal last year where I own 40% of it. My partner from Old Fashioned Real Estate owns 40% of it, and then two other people own 10% each, and they put up all of the money on this 16-unit deal. And they get 6% on their money and 10% of the equity, and they're happy with that because they get 6% on their money. They're getting income, but they get equity upside too. And when we refinance and they get their money back, they still own 10% of the deal. In that particular case, we ended up getting a stupid offer, and we're selling it now. It should close next month, and they're going to get almost double their money back in a year and a half. And so they're stupid happy. And of course, I'm going to get a big paycheck when it closes, and I don't have any money in. And the only reason I do deals like that is because when I first started buying real estate, I had just filed bankruptcy and I had no money and I didn't have a choice. I didn't know it wasn't how you did stuff. I just did it. It's kind of like I didn't know what meditation was or mantras. I've just been a guy who'd like, ready, fire, aim, right? Like just go try stuff and see what works. And this strategy has worked really well for me. And so we just kept doing it. And I don't know anyone else that does it. I mean, now I guess Brandon Turner gave it a name or whatever. So apparently people will probably be his next book, and then everyone will be doing it. And no one will remember it was my idea, but whatever. No bad days. So it doesn't matter.
That's awesome. And thank you. And then in terms of like the relationships you're making, are these referrals or, friends, family members, or, are you using platforms like LinkedIn?
Yeah. I mean,
how do you go about that?
Yeah, I don't actively use social media, LinkedIn, Instagram, that kind of stuff. In the sense that like I don't DM people and be like, hey, you should invest in my deal, right? I don't do that kind of stuff. But I am active on all. I'm not so great on LinkedIn, actually. I probably ought to do better, but I'm pretty active on Facebook, Instagram. I even make goofy Instagram reels and stuff. You guys can go follow me over there at Jeffrey Holst on Instagram. And I have a couple of Facebook groups. We have the Old Fashioned Real Estate private group on Facebook, and we've got my other podcast called Last Life Ever, which is just about living the best version of your life. We have a private group as well on Facebook. And so what I do is I just throw a lot of stuff out there, and then what happens is I might meet you, Erickson, at a real estate meetup, or I might meet you here, and you're going to remember who I am because I got up and talked, or, I told you about my real estate show or whatever. And you're going to go home and Google me, and you're going to see that I know, a little bit about real estate. And then you're going to reach out to me. And that's where most of our contacts have come from. Some of them are friends and family, you know, maybe, actually they're all friends or family. The reality is, I meet people, they become my friend, and then they want to invest with me, right? That's essentially the strategy. So I go to lots of real estate meetups. I go to a lot of coffee meetups, happy hours. It doesn't matter if it's Zoom or in person, or I mean, next week I'm going, if any of you guys are there, you should definitely look me up. I'm going to go to Rod Khleif in Orlando next week. Not because I want to join Rod Khleif's mastermind. I'm sure it's great, but I'm not going to join. And I know that going in. I'm going to go there and I'm going to meet other people that are doing multifamily real estate. And I'm going to meet attorneys and I'm going to meet bankers and insurance people because I think the biggest thing about real estate is it's a team sport, and you got to meet as many people as you can. And you just don't know when opportunities are going to come up. You know, I mean, I did George's show, right? And you know, the thing is, if George runs into a deal in Chattanooga, he's probably going to think of me. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, George. I'm putting you on the spot there, but I feel like that's what's going to happen, right?
Fair enough. Yep. You know Chattanooga. Love it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like if I tell people what I do and I get out there and I talk to people, deals materialize, investors materialize. I mean, going on podcasts, I mean, like, who knows? One of you might reach out to me on Instagram next week and be like, hey, I want to hear more about your deals. And if you do, we'll have a conversation, you know, we'll talk about it. If not, no big deal. It doesn't matter, right? Because I really believe that that we live in a world of abundance. And if we just, you know, give a lot of value to people, like it'll come back to us some way. And it's worked really well for me. I mean, since I started living that way, my life's been pretty great.
Awesome, thanks. I don't
Kevin, you
want to show. I got
yourself.
more questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for sharing your story. I think it was on Angels Meetup one time. I heard a little bit about it. But I have a question for you right now. It's a kind of two-part question. Ultimately, what are you trying to achieve in real estate? And the second part is like, do you have specific areas that you're looking at for real estate?
Sure. So what I was trying to achieve originally was make sure that if I died, my wife would still have money. I mean, that was literally the motivating factor. I think we're okay with that now. Like if I were to die right now, I hope I don't, because I like being alive, but if I do, it'll be okay. She'll be able to pay her bills. What I'm trying to do now is enjoy what I do. So I'm not particularly interested in buying like, you know, high return, like houses in bad neighborhoods, war zones, stuff like that. It's so much work and it's not enjoyable. And, you know, the returns are there. That's what I started with. I started buying, you know, $20,000 houses in Detroit. That's how I started investing, because I didn't have any money and those were the only thing I could afford to do. I don't really have an interest in doing that anymore. Now I'm only interested in doing things that are interesting to me. So like one thing I want to do is I want to learn about tokenizing real estate. I think that's really interesting right now. Another thing I want to do is I want to build a safari lodge in Tanzania. I've already found some land. I've got people on the ground looking for stuff for me, looking at permits and licensing and all this stuff, because I think it's really cool. Like I love like seeing lions and elephants. I'm not talking about a hunting lodge. I'm talking about like, let's go and like hang out with lions. I think it's fun. So that's, you know, that's the thing I want to do. And I think it helps the community too. Like I want to employ local Tanzanians to do those things. You know, so that's a big thing for me. I mean, this move to Puerto Rico has got me really excited about learning about the Puerto Rican real estate market. So there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a declining population, but an influx of new rich money. And so you have some markets that are going way up and some that are crashing. And I find that fascinating because it's unlike any market I've ever been in before. So my real estate goals right now are just to like do interesting things. It's to lean into that personal identity of what would the more interesting person do? Well, I think the most interesting person would like, you know, figure out how to buy like igloo space in Antarctica. So maybe I'll go to Antarctica and look at real estate there. I don't you can actually own real estate in Antarctica. Like Elon Musk's really interesting though. I think he might have me beat, right? So maybe I need to invest in like Martian real estate or something. That's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. I'm being a little facetious, but really that's the strategy, is just to find things that are interesting to do. I'm still buying multifamily real estate in Chattanooga and also in Metro Detroit, because I think that 10 to 50 unit buildings are dramatically undervalued right now. And I think there's a huge opportunity there. And I like making money. And I like providing opportunities for my investors to make money. And that's another reason why I do it, because there are people, doctors, lawyers, they don't have time to invest in real estate, but they can put money into a syndication. And if I provide them an opportunity to make 20, 30% returns annually, that's amazing. Now, I'm not saying every deal I do does that, but like lately, that's the kind of stuff we've been doing. And if I can continue to provide those kind of opportunities, like it's really beneficial for them and their families as well. So.
Great, thanks. Another question. So moving to Puerto Rico, you have intentions of purchasing or developing. Which side are you looking at?
So flips are really interesting in Puerto Rico right now because they have a labor shortage. So they have, of course, there's that everywhere now, but it's particularly bad in Puerto Rico. So there's like really high, if you can solve the labor part, there's like a real big opportunity there. But the tourism industry is where the real opportunity is. So things like beach bars, hotels, converting condos to Airbnbs, things like that. So I'm really interested in that. I do like the idea of taking like whole neighborhoods and turning them around and developing them, but I don't really have the knowledge base about Puerto Rico yet to do anything there. I've bought zero real estate in Puerto Rico. I've been there about 7 weeks this year so far. And now I have a place there. So I plan on, I'm actually going back in 2 weeks, and I'll spend most of January and February there, and then I'll figure it out from there. So.
Greg, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Hi, everybody. How you doing? Jeff, thank you so much for your story, and it's very inspiring, especially a story where the rubber really hits the road, where your life is actually is actually in jeopardy, and it gives you that clairvoyance, that perspective, or change in perspective. You mentioned the overseas investment, which kind of perked my ears even more. Because one thing I have actually been looking at Puerto Rico and trying to find people with whom I can work with, and also find ways to maneuver around the corruption that's there.
Yeah, it's a real concern, the corruption part.
And also, I have a friend who actually he lives in the U.S., but his wife is Tanzanian, and he actually has properties in Tanzania, invests in Tanzania. And
we should connect offline about that, actually, because I'm interested in learning more on that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I see you put your phone number up too, so I'll text you when we get off here. Okay. And then you'll have mine. I mean, actually, you guys can all have my number. I'm not hiding it. If you want it, just send me just instant message me, and I'll give it to whoever wants it. And also my email is just jeffreyholst@gmail.com. So I'm easy to find. Anyway, so the Puerto Rican thing is really interesting in as much as, there's a corruption issue there. Finding people that you can trust to work with is actually it's tricky. So I have met several people in Puerto Rico that are doing real estate. And I've Google searched the crap out of it, trying to find people that are doing real estate. And I've met realtors and investors. There's actually a group called PR Consult or PR Consultants, something like that. That's a YouTube channel. They have a thing called Ria Rico, like RE, like a Ria, but it's Ria Rico. And they have a Facebook group for that. Those guys seem to know what's going on. I went to one of their breakfast meetings and met some of them. And I intend to continue to learn more about what they're doing. And then, of course, you have some of the bigger name people in Puerto Rico too, people like Peter Schiff and Harry Dent. And I've been fortunate enough to become friends with Harry over the last couple of years. And so I've been, talking to him about real estate. Of course, if you don't know who he is, he's an economic forecaster who's a big contrarian and constantly talks about how the real estate market's going to crash any minute. So he might not be the best alternative for figuring out how to buy good deals, but he is very, very smart and very well connected in Puerto Rico. So I've been trying to leverage that relationship as much as I can. But one of the reasons why I got a place there is because while I think it's a very interesting market, I don't feel like I have enough knowledge about the market to be investing there. I'm a big fan of mitigating risk. It's commonly said that, riskier investments have higher rewards, and that's true. If you're willing to accept market risk, you get a higher return on your investment. But you can accept market risk and mitigate that risk and still get compensated for it. So if you have extra knowledge about a market, you can be the expert on a particular property type in a particular market. And then even though that market might have more risk relative to another market, because you're an expert, you're taking less risk than another investor in that same market, and you're still getting rewarded for that risk that you're no longer taking. And so for me, about Puerto Rico, tremendous upside on a lot of properties. But to successfully navigate that, I need to figure out how to get asymmetric risk and reward. And the only way I know to do that is to really dive in and deep dive in. So when I moved to when I moved to Chattanooga, I took a part-time job driving an Uber so that I could learn about the market. I talked to every real estate investor I could find. I went to every real estate meetup I could find. And I intend to do the same kind of stuff in Puerto Rico. I doubt I'll drive an Uber just because I don't speak Spanish at all. And that would be difficult as a non-native Spanish speaker. But I will, drive neighborhoods and talk to people and try to learn Spanish because I really do believe, and actually take a lot of Ubers, because it turns out Uber drivers are a great resource about neighborhoods because they know where every apartment complex is. So you want to learn about a city, get in an Uber, pick some one side of the city to the other, and just talk the whole time to the driver about real estate. They all know real estate. They might not know they know real estate, but they know real estate.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Does anyone have any final questions for Jeffrey on anything real estate related or mindset?
No, or anything, actually. I'm happy. I'm an open book here, guys. You can ask me whatever you want.
I guess no one else has any questions. So I guess we will pretty much end this amazing discussion here. So with that being said, let's do our snapshot, which is the fun part of the day. So feel free to straighten out the hair. George, I don't see the cowboy hat today. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, there's no cowboy hat today. And where's Aubrey to make fun of me for fluffing up my hair? She's away. She doesn't. She missed her opportunity to tease me today.
She's somewhere. She'll jump on eventually. Whenever you're ready, Miss Aubrey. But all right, everyone. So let's make sure I take this picture correctly. So 3, 2, 1, big smiles. Awesome. So with that said, everyone, Jeff, we want to thank you so much for, again, sharing that story, truly transparent. And it was a very powerful story. And I appreciate everyone who took the time out to ask the questions. And I hope everyone learned something from this. And of course, the replay will be posted tomorrow on the YouTube channel. I will drop the link in the chat for those who missed it. And also with Jeff's information, it will be in the chat. So don't forget to save the chat so you can connect with everyone on here, find ways to add value towards each other. With that being said, this is the Financial Freedom Through Apartment Investing Meetup. We will resume next week, Monday, with Mr. Damian Lupo, who will be speaking on how your IRA is a ticking time bomb. I am looking forward to that.
Damien's great,
So-
by the way. You guys are going to be happy
Yeah.
to hear him.
Amazing guy. I had him on my podcast not too long ago, so I learned a ton. So looking forward to having you guys hear his story as well. And we're out.